Aloha and welcome to this week's video. So this week I'm actually starting a fun new project. I'm going to be recreating a museum piece. So the Lei mano that I have here on my phone and then a larger image that you can see here. This is a Lei mano that was found I think somewhere between 1820 and 1870. They don't think it's too much older than that just because of its construction. The shark teeth that line the outer edge are actually great white shark teeth, which I'm not going to be using because I don't have great white shark teeth. I'm going to be using bull shark teeth. But it's pinned into place, but the pins that it's using is actually brass pins, which wouldn't have showed up in Hawaii until after their contact with European trade. And so they definitely think it was a piece that was made a little bit later, more recently in history, not as old. But it has a really unique design that's not really found in too many other places. And so I've wanted to make it for a really long time. Just for various reasons, haven't had the chance. And so now I am finally getting an opportunity to go ahead and start trying to make this piece. So I'm using a darker piece of coal wood that I have just because that traditional piece is also dark. Probably darkened with age as well, but I wanted to use a darker piece. I don't know the type of wood that the original piece was made from. It was definitely made from a hardwood. I don't know what type of hardwood. There's a few different types of hardwood in Hawaii. Because most of my work I do in koa wood, I'm going to be making my piece out of Hawaiian koa. The first step was to draw out the piece. I wanted to make sure it was symmetrical. And so I drew my center line and then a couple cross lines. And the reason why I did half of it at a time is it's a lot easier to make a symmetrical piece if you do half of it first and then the other half, rather than trying to, in one stroke, draw the entire outer edge. Once I had it drawn out and cut the outer edge cut out, I now need to remove the intersections. My plan for removing these intersections is I'm going to be using these auger bits. These are larger drill bits, but they work pretty well. Now, because I'm using these larger bits here, they'd probably be better inside of like a drill press that has a little bit more torque. My drill here, my hand drill, was barely enough power to cut through. I ended up heating up a couple times, and I needed to take breaks in between to let it cool down. But in the end, I was able to do the job and remove the majority of the material that I needed to without me needing to get my chisel set out or try to hog it out with the grinder or something else. And so that worked out really well. I did want to be very careful that I didn't drill outside of those lines that I had drawn, my guidelines. So I'm being a little bit careful with that. But the primary two bits that I'm using is I'm using 1 inch and a half bit down the center here, and then I had 1 1/4 inch bit and then a 3/4 bit, smaller one. I was going to remove, after I got the center hole cut out with the largest bit that I have, I was going to use smaller bits and cut out those little legs, but that ended up being kind of a pain, and you'll see why here in just a minute. As I was cutting through them, I had this last little section here at the very end where it's too narrow to use this large bit. So I stepped it down to a smaller bit here, but then I needed to step it down even further to a smaller bit at the end, which you'll see here in just a second after I finish cleaning that out. So you can see this segment here, but I'd kind of drilled too close to it, and so I didn't have a whole lot of material. And so it was a real challenge trying to cut that out. The bit kept trying to walk out of that groove. And so I was finally able to get it through and get it cut out, but I knew that I would have the same problem trying to cut out those other outer sections. And so what I decided to do was just grab my chisel and just start cutting it out with the chisel. The outer edges of the cutout were good. I just needed to clean it up with the chisel set. One thing that I ended up doing though is as I was hogging out this inside material, I noticed that my initial drawing that I had done on the inner loop was a little bit too wide. I didn't really like it very much, and so I ended up not chiseling out all the way to the outer edge of that, which you can kind of see there. I left it a little bit thinner, and ironically my lines ended up being way off too. even though it looks like I've got a way more material on the right hand side, I do actually, but not as much as you would think. And that's just a result of my incorrect sketch to begin with. And so it's always better to leave a little bit more material than you think you need. You can always remove that material. It's a lot harder to make the wood grow back. So I'm leaving it a little bit wide, and then I'll remove material as I need to. And as I was using a rasp here on the inside to clean up those final bumpy sections and make it nice and smooth. And as I was cleaning those up, I realized that one of those sections, that one of the sides was a little bit too thick, but it was too wide on the outer edge, not the inner edge. So rather than making the inner edge thinner, I'm going to be thinning out the outer edge, and that way I'll have a nice symmetrical look. The handle, I did end up cutting the handle a little bit wider on the inside than it shows on the image, but primarily that's just because I have a little bit wider of a hand, and if I made it any thinner on the inside, it would compress on my hand when I put my hand in there, and I didn't like that feeling. I wanted it to be a little bit wider. So the handle section's a little bit larger, but that's just as a result of where I'm going to be holding it. I am going to be rounding the handle, and so it'll shrink as I go to round it, and I think the proportions will end up looking just fine. Unfortunately, I didn't have a whole lot of time to work on this piece this week. I've been very busy, so I'll hopefully have a lot more time over the next couple weeks to get this piece finished up. I have a ton of work to do on it. Everything that you've seen up to this point is all just the basic starting shaping. I still have to put in some tapers. I need to put in the teeth, and I'll get into all that build a little bit later on. But this is as far as I got with this piece this week, was just getting the general shape cut out and ready for more fine-tune and more shaping for the actual piece itself. I hope you enjoyed the video. I know I'm going to be enjoying working on this piece. If you like, go ahead and leave a like, subscribe. It really helps me out a lot. It gets more reach and more people viewing the channel. If you have any suggestions or like to see anything else, let me know. And again, mahalo plenty for everyone that tunes in, and I will see you next time. Aloha.